similar. It's similar for all the different post-acute care companies. There are some distributors that are very highly utilized in the industry, two of which are McKesson and Medline. And so McKesson and Medline have a lot of the relationships in the post-acute care space from a distribution standpoint. And as you probably know, Medline, more specifically, has started to, over the years, manufacture their own, products. And so for the smaller players that maybe don't have those groups to evaluate all the different manufacturers of, let's just say a wound care device, Medline might say, hey, we just started making this device. We're 20% less than the marketplace. You can test it out. And oh, by the way, we can distribute it to you. And we have wound care nurses that are on staff that can be there to train, to educate, et cetera. So that value proposition of, lower costs, existing partnership, additional service, trainings, education, et cetera. I don't know if it works necessarily in the category that you're looking at, but it does apply to a lot of categories that are purchased here. And then there's others that need to go direct to the manufacturer. So oftentimes players will go to the direct to the bed manufacturer or direct to the food company, like the dairy company. They're not dealing with Cisco necessarily to just distribute the milk. You're going to Dean Farms because you're going right to the manufacturer of the product. So it varies depending on the product.
Got it. Okay. And then I'm going to assume, but I want to clarify with you that if there was a new disruptive or a new product, it could either be shown directly to you guys or it could come through a distributor. Is both channels? Is that how you become aware of new options and new products? Okay.
Yeah, and, some of the distributors have had partnerships in the past where, maybe they provide a little bit more visibility to you and you provide to them some stickiness for their client to be able to keep their client because folks do move distributors. It's not as sticky as pharmacy. But yes, it's either or. And the smaller you get, the more they rely on their distribution partners to help them out.
Makes complete sense. Just taking a look here. Oh, one question. We have heard the trend that you spoke to earlier about more and more long-term care facilities outsourcing the housekeeping jobs. Do you see, and I don't know how much you can speak to this, but do you see Genesis doing that, or are you guys still mostly in-house?
I'm pretty sure it's publicly available that it's already outsourced.
Okay, great. I had seen something on that, just to be clear, but I wanted to make sure. It's always better to hear it from the source and know it's accurate. Okay. And then just a question. You mentioned earlier ACO relationships. And one of the things I'm interested in is, to your point, the whole industry, from what I understand, the whole industry margins are thin, right? And there's more beds available than there are residents in those beds right now. So I've heard a push towards continuous partnering with acute care or hospital systems as a way to keep your census up within long-term care facilities. How do big chains, knowing that you guys have such a national presence, like is that consistent either through your ACO relationship or other relationships with IDNs that you have actual established relationships with acute care facilities? Or how does that work, that connection point?
So I'm probably not the foremost authority on all of that. But I will tell you kind of along the lines of what one of my former bosses had to say. Those relationships tend to be a little bit more local. And so, in one region or in one market, if a nursing home has a really good, strong relationship with the hospital, and there's a good flow of patients, and those patients are taken care of. And when they go home, they don't re-hospitalize within 30 to 60 days. Then they'll get more patients. Those types of relationships tend to organically build up, and also are incumbent upon the skilled nursing facility to go and say, hey, did you know we had a cardiac recovery program? Did you know we had a COPD program? Did you know this? But that's going to be a different story than what the skilled nursing facilities are saying maybe to their hospital system in Houston, right? So I don't see that skilled nursing facilities call up a big hospital system and say, hey, we're going to use you everywhere. That's not happening now. Now, I'm sure you've paid attention to the recent industry acquisitions. You know, HCR ManorCare was acquired by a health system.
Yep.
And so that's probably going to become more relevant in time, but the health system isn't actually in every area where HCR ManorCare is, and vice versa. So I don't think it's going to happen quite the way maybe people think it's going to happen, because there's not as much carryover to that. Where I think there is carryover and where things are going is there are giant managed care companies like United Health or CVS Aetna or Humana. I forget who's bought who at this point in time, but they're all huge. And
yes.
Managed care is more a percentage of skilled nursing facility revenue than it's ever been. And of course, they're insurance companies, so they drive down the length of stay, they drive down the rates to the point where they're comfortable based on the actuarial evidence that they have. So while I can't say that, you know, the hospital system national conversation is occurring, I think that's happening at the managed care level, and the hospital relationships are being managed pretty locally.
Makes complete sense. And that's consistent with, I think we started this conversation with you talking about the benefits of being large and having scale. And this is one of those things where there's no equivalent, to your point, within actual hospitals, there's very few equivalents, and it's more in the managed care providers that there are large national partnerships. One other question I have for you, and this is a little bit out of left field. Have you had can you think of any examples where let me back up. So earlier you talked about the value equation, and you talked about how clinical folks, you don't want to buy the cheapest linens because they end up causing more harm down the road, more work, more cost for the organization as a whole. So this idea of the balanced value equation between cost and benefit. Can you speak, I don't know if you have any examples of where maybe a slightly higher priced player who has a brand name that would be recognizable came into this space, and what does that matter? Does brand matter in this space?
I think it depends. I think you build brand up over time. I think there's some brands that if they would come in, they would have clout right away. 3M is a good example of somebody that has a great brand name in this space, but also in many others. There's a company called Point Click Care that is it's a EHR system, so it's an electronic health record tool that 10 years ago I couldn't tell you who they were. They had no brand, but they got into the space, they disrupted it, they identified the fact that there was an opportunity, and now they are by far the leading provider of EHR technology in skilled nursing. They migrated to the cloud before that was a thing, really, and so they have a brand presence. And so they disrupted, but also now have a brand presence. So I think there's opportunities to start from scratch. There are, like, Medline had a partnership with Abacus. Abacus was a software tool that helped you prepare for regulators coming into your building and surveys. And it was actually written by the guy, the PhD, who wrote the code for the Medicare survey teams. And so it was this perfect product where you said, hey, this is something that you can download and use to prepare for surveys, because it's just such a